Marie Curie, we've all heard the name, right? But the story, the real story behind the legend, it's so much more than just a name in a science textbook. It's this incredible saga of someone who went up against, everything you can imagine. Poverty, sexism, just crushing personal loss, and somehow became one of the greatest scientists who ever lived. So let's get into how she actually pulled it off. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of who she was. Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. For her, this wasn't just some nice-sounding platitude. It was her operating system. It's how she dealt with a world that was constantly trying to shut her down, and how she had the courage to look at the biggest mysteries of the universe and say, okay, let's figure this out. Which brings us to the big question, right? How on earth does a penniless governess from Poland, someone who was literally barred from getting a higher education, become the most famous scientist on the planet? It's a journey that's almost too incredible to believe, starting in secret, and ending with her name basically becoming immortal. Okay, so before we dive into how she did it, we've got to talk about what she did. We need to get a sense of just how massive her accomplishments were. In her life, it's really a story told in firsts. And I'm not just talking impressive firsts. I mean game-changing, revolutionary firsts. Think about this. Most scientists would give anything to win just one Nobel Prize. It's the absolute peak of a career. Marie Curie? Yeah, she won 2. But hold on, it gets even crazier. It's not just that she won 2. She is the only person in history to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different scientific fields. We're talking physics and chemistry. That's just mind-blowing. It speaks volumes about the sheer power and range of her mind. And the list just keeps going. First woman to win a Nobel. First person to win 2. First woman to become a professor at the legendary Sorbonne. First woman in Europe to get a doctorate in science. Every single one of these was a monumental achievement. Each one was her kicking down a door that had always been locked to women. So where does a story like this even begin? Well, it doesn't start with fame or fortune. It starts with a super smart young woman, back then known as Maria Sklodowska, who's about to run headfirst into a wall. So Maria was born in Warsaw, Poland, and she was, a total prodigy. Graduated high school at 15, top of her class, gold medal, the whole shebang. The future should have been wide open. But there was one huge problem. The University of Warsaw was for men only, period. But for Maria, that no entry sign wasn't the end of the road. Oh no, it was basically a challenge. So what do you do when the system is rigged against you? Well, she and her sister Branya, they came up with this incredible, almost cinematic plan, a pact. For 5 long years, Maria would work as a governess, basically a live-in tutor, and send every penny she could scrape together to her sister in Paris, so Branya could go to medical school. And the deal was, once Branya became a doctor, she'd pay it forward and support Maria. Talk about a gamble. They were literally betting their futures on each other. And it worked. In 1891, when she was 24, it was finally her turn. She packs her bags, heads to Paris, and enrolls in the Sorbonne. She'd made it. This was the dream. But as she was about to find out, living the dream in Paris was going to be tough, really tough. Her glamorous life in Paris, it was a tiny, freezing attic room. She lived on basically just buttered bread and tea. And she was so obsessed with her studies that she would literally forget to eat to the point where she would just pass out from hunger. But you know what? She was finally learning, and that's all that mattered to her. And despite being freezing and starving most of the time, her brain was just on another level. She didn't just get by, she absolutely crushed it. She graduated first in her class in physics, and then, for good measure, went and got a second degree in math, finishing second. So, degrees in hand, she needed a lab to work in, and that's what led her to Pierre Curie. And in him, she found her match. Not just romantically, but scientifically. They had this shared, all-consuming passion for discovery. They got married in 1895, and this partnership, well, it was about to change everything. Okay, so for her PhD, Marie needed a topic, and she picked a real head-scratcher. There was this new discovery by another scientist, Henri Becquerel, about these weird invisible rays coming out of uranium. Nobody really knew what they were. And that choice to investigate those rays was going to kick off a scientific revolution. First off, she gave this whole thing a name. She called it radioactivity. But then she came up with a truly radical idea. She theorized that these rays weren't some kind of chemical thing happening between atoms. No, she said they were coming from inside the atom itself. This was a huge deal. And where did they make this world-changing discovery? In some fancy, state-of-the-art lab? Nope. It was basically a shed. It was leaky, it was damp, no heat in the winter, just a miserable place to work. And it was in this shed, surrounded by literal tons of rock, that they started hunting for one of nature's deepest secrets. So here's how they figured it out. Marie was testing all sorts of stuff, and she got to this mineral called pitchblende, and she found something wild. The pitchblende was way, way more radioactive than the pure uranium inside it should have been. And for her, the only logical explanation was there must be something else in there, something new, something intensely radioactive. And after years, I mean years of backbreaking work, basically boiling down tons of this rock in giant vats, they found it. They proved her hypothesis right. They didn't just find one new element, they found two. They named one polonium, after her beloved home country Poland, and the other they called radium because of its incredible radioactivity. And in 1903, the world finally caught on. The Nobel Prize Committee awarded the prize in physics to Marie Curie, Pierre Curie, and Henri Becquerel for their work on radioactivity. And with that, Marie Curie made history as the very first woman to ever win a Nobel Prize. So she's at the absolute top of the scientific world. But life wasn't done testing her. In fact, her greatest challenge was still ahead, a devastating personal blow that would change everything. In 1906, just a few years after they won the Nobel, tragedy struck. Pierre was crossing a street in Paris, and he was hit and killed by a horse-drawn carriage. Just like that, he was gone. Marie was suddenly a widow, a single mother to two little girls, and completely alone in her work. But she didn't crumble. In the middle of all that grief, she found this incredible strength. The Sorbonne offered her Pierre's teaching position, and she took it, becoming the first woman professor in its entire history. She threw herself back into their research, and that work, the work she continued alone, is what earned her that second Nobel Prize in 1911, this time in chemistry, making her the first person ever to win two. And her work wasn't just about pure science, locked away in a lab. When World War I exploded across Europe, she knew her discoveries could help. She designed and built these mobile X-ray stations in trucks. They were nicknamed Little Curies. She and her daughter Irene drove them right to the front lines so surgeons could see bullets and shrapnel inside wounded soldiers. It's estimated they saved 1 million lives. When you look at her whole life, it's just this powerful testament to what one person can do even when the whole world is stacked against them. She proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that genius doesn't care about gender, that the most powerful barriers are often the ones we just accept as normal. So her story kind of leaves us with a question for ourselves, right? What barriers are still out there for us to break down?